Tony is a really interesting film. It is the journey of Anthony Bourdain to go from being a kid to being an adult, which is a really interesting story because, as the opening quote says, Bourdain considered himself basically a jerk at a young age, and that he probably needed a good ass kicking to become a better person. And in some ways, this film is a reflection on that ass kicking that one summer changed him and turned him into, I don't want to say a better man, but certainly a different person and someone kind of following a different path. And it's really cool to see the approach of this film because I think the location is as much a character in this as anything. And that location and that character is part of what contributes to making Anthony Bourdain who he was. I also think as a fan of Bourdain, whether you're a fan or not, I think this is an interesting film, but I think as a fan, you can definitely see a lot of who he was in this. And that's something that's very tough to pull off. But essentially the story is that Tony, as he wanted to be called at the time, was in between university and trying to figure out what to do for the summer. And he was hoping for this scholarship and he didn't get it. But instead he chases a girl to Cape Cod to try and win her over. And that is the story of how he ends up in a place that changes him. It's really kind of simple, to be honest. A lot of it comes down to the right place at the right time, but it is beautifully told. The richness of this location, it feels real. It feels like a place that I would love to go on vacation. I wish that this place still existed today. I've never even been to Cape Cod, but seeing this version of Cape Cod is so warm and heartfelt. It feels like a place that you could step into, that you'd walk out into the sand, that there's still all these old restaurants, taverns, and places that just kind of feel like a lost part of history. And to think of that shaping and changing Anthony Bourdain from a kid who he says in one quote that needed to have his ass kicked, a place that kind of shapes him and in some ways does kick his ass to make him be a better person. And part of that is this character of Chef, played by Antonio Banderas. Just the most wonderful performance, simple, effective, but heartfelt. Leo Woodall plays Sal, and he is this great, I don't want to call him, I'd almost call him a villain, but he's not a villain. But he's this great troublemaker, and to some degree, I think of him as playing Anthony Bourdain's dark side. And I don't know if that's intentional, planned, or anything, but that's the way I read it. And I think it's really interesting to watch this film and think of the dark side of Anthony Bourdain being an influence on him at this age, versus Antonio Banderas' character, Chef, being the good side, the father figure, all the brightness that comes out of Bourdain, the intelligence and the passion for food. I think it's really interesting to think of those two characters as the two that influence him the most in this. Emilia Jones as Nancy is the love interest, and, you know, she is wonderful in this. I don't think they wrote her the best role. I think the script could have been a lot stronger for her. I really wish there was more depth there, more story to tell from her side, but it is a really cool relationship the way it does get told. And it's interesting. I don't know how much of this is true, but I do think they paint a great picture of who Anthony Bourdain wanted to be as well. And I think part of that was his feelings for Nancy, for sure. I think the food is beautifully shot and prepared. The art direction here goes so far as to make the food look like you really need to go and order it. It is beautiful, and that whole seaside Cape Cod food scene, especially for that era, it's amazing. I could step into this film and be very happy, at least for a week, if nothing else. Once you've seen the film, let me know what you thought. I'd be very curious to chat about it in the comments. I was a big Anthony Bourdain fan, but I would be very curious to hear from both fans and non-fans alike what you thought of this story. It's really going to be a compelling summer film, I think. It's one of those films that if you see it on a big screen, it will invite you into the space, but you can very easily be happy watching it at home too once it does come out on home video. I really think it's a great story overall that we don't often see, of a biopic that goes a little deeper without trying to obsess over every detail. I think this paints a really broad picture of who Anthony Bourdain was. Thank you very much for watching.